I think that for us, there's a twofold to the impossible future. One is, I think there is this new vision forming of what it means to have a future forward team. This idea that the technology, the AI, is a teammate, is not just an enabler or a facilitator, but is actually somebody that you're treating on a daily basis as part of the team. You're collaborating, it's in real time, it's fully blended, and it may have a name, it may have a persona at some point. And I think being able to embrace a future that we don't fully see yet, is not fully formed yet. One takes leadership and is going to take amazing amount of sort of courage from people as well, to let go of the fear that comes from the change or comes from the letting go of things that we've known for most of our careers. I think that's exciting. I think it's fun. But again, I recognize and appreciate that's not the way everyone's going to see it in the beginning.
Great to see you, Beth Ann. Where were you born?
Baltimore, Maryland.
And you're going to become a CEO of a very big company, Dentsu. Tell us about how you feel about that opportunity.
I am excited, of course, but it's also got a lot of expectation around it for, I'm sure, for them and for me. And so there is a little bit of that kind of anxious energy as I go into the new role.
One thing I'm very curious about is I'm a great fan of the David Rubenstein show, where he interviews various CEOs and he talks about how you get to the top and stay at the top. And I think people would be very interested to know, how did you get to the role of a CEO of a big advertising, marketing, and digital transformation company?
One step at a time. I was also a number two in my career for a very long time. I entered my career already somewhat ambitious and desiring of doing things in different ways, of figuring out what was the unmet need in the organization and wanting to reinvent or reimagine how things could be done. I joined at the end of the Mad Men era, so there was a lot to change. And I think right leader for right time, I suppose, to some degree. But at some point, actually, my now husband said to me over dinner one night, when will you be ready to change the vowel in your title? And I quite honestly didn't even know what he meant. Why am I not thinking about CEO? And he saw me in a number of different roles doing the job of the CEO without the title. And so I think it was his power of persuasion of putting that idea in my head to make it real for me to think of myself in that way and then to step into that ultimate ambition and to recognize what was going to be different about that you're on a solo mission. And it is quite different. There is a different burden of ultimate solo leadership.
What was the difference between being number two and number one? There was a book called The Concierge, and they said the CEO stands in the spotlight. Uh, the concierge stands in the shadows, rules in the shadows, and influences the decisions upon which the fate of the world, the country, the company depends. So, how would you contrast those two roles?
I think that I was very lucky in a lot of my C-suite roles ahead of CEO. I had great leaders around me, or not always so great leaders, that also I learned through watching and observing and being partners with them. I had a strong instinct for what I would do differently. And I think I was ready to be tested in that way. I'd say the main difference is that level of ultimate responsibility. And so, even if you're incredibly prepared, that burden of what it means to carry all those jobs and to, especially in the professional services space where it's not just about your career, it's about your clients, it's about their businesses, not just your business. There's a multitude of responsibility, I think, that comes from being in this type of a role.
As the number two, were you a trusted advisor? Is that how you operated, or more of a implementer?
I was both. I was definitely doing both.
What would be your advice to other people who are very talented and want to get to the top? What would you advise them, if you could sum that up?
I think that the first is ambition. I think there are a lot of people around you sometimes when you exude a level of desire and deep engagement in what you're doing that want to squelch it. And I always say, ignite that flame and find ways to keep it stoked. Surround yourself with people who recognize your talent and are going to give you opportunities and put you in positions to learn and grow and stretch. I think that we've had conversations before, you and I, in that we've talked about the importance of, in today's world, that adaptability of constantly learning, of having a very open mindset to all the change and newness that's coming. And so I think a leader has to be one that it has that adaptability at heart and is flexible and interested in constantly evolving themselves. They're not just centered or positioned in a certain way.
Let's say since the last election in the United States, I think it would be fair to say that the world has been turned upside down. So you're taking charge of a big company, a very dynamic industry, at a period of time when the world has been turned upside down. I said something to the effect previously that some people look at it like Chicken Little, the sky is falling in. Other people think it's the greatest thing in the world. So, how, as a CEO, you hold that?
Well, I think that you have to look at it as an incredibly fun and privileged challenge. But how boring would it be to step into a role and nothing's changing? I
Yeah,
think it's a significant and magnificent opportunity to walk into something when times are changing. And I think that the tools and the technology and the challenges, the disruptions are going to pose very interesting opportunity as well as challenge and importance to think through the risk, be rigorous in all that you do, leverage all of the human capital and new technologies that are out there around you. But I think it's just an incredible time to make the organization adaptable, smarter than it was when you came in, more capable than it was when you came in, including the clients. So I can't imagine a more exciting time to making a change like this.
that's a fantastic thought. And it's probably one that you could leverage with the CEOs or other clients. They should be looking at the world the same way rather than pulling back in fear. They should be going forward with the thrill of excitement. Now, in coming in as a new CEO, probably one of your first priorities will be to build a true team. And one of the questions we had written down was, how do you go about creating an amazing team? I read something where Jensen Wang of NVIDIA said, I've surrounded myself with a team of superhuman beings. I surrounded myself with a team of geniuses. I think we're in an era where you need more than what Jack Welch used to call A, B, and C players. So, how are you going to go about surrounding yourself with a team of amazing people? How do you make decisions about who to bring in and who to show the door?
Yeah, I think that first of all, there's a great team already in place. And that is one of my superpowers is believing that team will be greater with myself in the mix. It's like you are the conductor ultimately of the orchestra and how that all plays together. And you can have incredible individual musicians, but it still comes down to that person who brings the group together. My most important qualities are the unified vision and desire to go do something greater than they are right now. People who truly believe in the potential of the organization. And I can tell, believe in me coming in as a new leader, and that there's an energy, even if they've been there for 15 or 20 years, that comes from someone who's new, inspiring what comes next for them. There's a true work ethic at the heart of it and a desire to do what it takes. When you are at the top of the game, it is not easy. We have stiff competition right now, and what is required in our careers is like we've never experienced before. So, do we have a mix of people who get that and are willing to come along for the fun and not take themselves so seriously, but take the work super seriously? So, that chemistry, that sense of building a super high functioning team. I was just watching the Netflix documentary on the America's basketball team for the last Olympics. And these are incredible individual players that are assembled to be the winning team that is going to come home with a gold. And the US team has made the world better at basketball. So it was fascinating to watch how a team of individual stars who play for different teams when they're in this country versus some of the other countries they're up against have to be assembled and in a short period of time in practice sessions pulled together and as a single team of just magnificent, incredible world best players. That's the stuff that inspires me from a leadership standpoint.
There's a guy from Dartmouth, Tech School of Business. He wrote a book called Super Bosses, and he defined a super boss as an exceptional leader who is great at developing other exceptional leaders. And maybe that's one of your superpowers.
Yeah, I mean, I've always believed that even in personal life, you surround yourself with people who are going to bring out the best. They're going to call you on your bullshit. I'm a real believer too on being very direct and actionable in feedback, in real time, and just being with people who genuinely believe in bringing out your best, and that you're unlocking someone's potential, and the greatest potential is still ahead of them.
And what about building a shared vision? Something you said about you're living in a world of ruthless competition. If you don't have much competition, it's not that difficult to, let's say, achieve the impossible or to go beyond predictable business results. But if you're living in a world of ruthless competition or tough competition, the options you have for doing something extraordinary are not that many because everybody's looking for those same options. So, what's your idea of building a shared vision? How will you go about that?
I think the key in that is shared. So if the vision is only coming from myself and they feel like I went away and I created it on my own, then it is going to be harder for them to fully wholeheartedly adopt it. I think if they feel like they had a role to play in historically sharing with me aspects of the company that are part of its core DNA, part of the root story, they are imparting wisdom that comes from their individual expertise that they're bringing to the party. And that, again, my job is one of architecting the part that gives it edge, that gives it competitiveness, that brings my outside in perspective, and ultimately uses some of the kind of language that is also authentic to myself in the mix. Then I think you get something where it really becomes a unifier. It's something that can be shared and something that everyone can buy into. For me, too, there's always got to be ambition and aspiration to it. It's got to be rooted in what we can deliver and what is truthful and real to the organization. But it has to also be ambitious to rally people and to inspire them and to make them believe that this is a mission worth going on.
I wrote a book
Yeah.
called Masterful Coaching, which was about coaching CEOs and teams to realize an impossible future. You talked about the ambitious aspiration. Do you have a specific impossible future that you'd like to achieve? And I wanted to weave into that something we said earlier that you mentioned in another conversation that people used to look at technology as a tool. Now technology is part of the team and a way to achieve what was previously thought difficult or impossible. If you could go into both of those, it would be great.
I think that for us, there's a twofold to the impossible future. One is, I think there is this new vision forming of what it means to have a future forward team. This idea that the technology, the AI, is a teammate, is not just an enabler or a facilitator, but is actually somebody that you're treating on a daily basis as part of the team. You're collaborating, it's in real time, it's fully blended, and it may have a name, it may have a persona at some point. And I think being able to embrace a future that we don't fully see yet, is not fully formed yet, one takes leadership and is going to take amazing amount of sort of courage from people as well, to let go of the fear that comes from the change or comes from the letting go of things that we've known for most of our careers. I think that's exciting. I think it's fun. But again, I recognize and appreciate that's not the way everyone's going to see it in the beginning. So I think that is one, and it's incredibly powerful. I think the other is that in professional services, we are still client service, not still. That is at the heart of what we do and how we succeed. And I think that for the last decade, anyway, in the industry, I've watched a lot of our agencies and holding companies and operating models center so much on what the company does, the agency does, the business of the holding company business. And at the same time, they were speaking client centricity, move away from the client. And I think this is a moment in time where that collapsing of the walls between agency and client, and truly creating an extension of a client team where you're truly in service of the client and the client's business, is the future. And that's going to require a rethink of almost every aspect of our business.
You're being of authentic service to the client as opposed to pitching them something or selling them something. Claude Hopkins, one of the founders of modern advertising, said it was important to have a unique selling proposition. What do you see as the unique selling proposition for your organization going forward?
It's
Some
early
that might be
days.
hard to say that, but
Yes, it's early
just throw it
days.
out.
So I can speak in terms of what attracted me to the opportunity and the company. I think, first of all, the fact that we're based in Japan, are headquartered and originated in Japan is an incredible part of that. I think I have huge respect for the Japanese culture and so many Japanese theories and philosophies that underpin so much of our lives without us having sometimes the name for it. It's also culture forward. And there's so much that is inspiring to all of us when we think about entertainment and we think about fashion and we think about music that comes from Asia in particular, but also specifically Japan in this case. So I think that there's way more that we can be drawing forward from what is our Japanese heritage. The other piece is I think we were the first true company that was ahead of the game when it came to consolidating areas of media, of marketing, of CX, digital business transformation, and creative into a single, what I like to call it, superhuman agency. We aren't really a
That's
holding
great.
company. We're not really a holding company. We don't have all these different complexities, all these different individual brands, silos and P&Ls competing with each other internally.
You're contrasting the American or Western marketing.
Some of it is probably from the Japanese heritage, but some of it is just that they were out ahead in terms of those single Dentsu vision, going back to even Dentsu International and how it was structuring itself to simplify the business for clients. And because of that head start, when I take a look inside, a lot of the things that other companies are trying to promise now or trying to move to, they're already doing. And so I think that's an incredible advantage.
You're a company that has a great palette to bring to the canvas, and your unique selling proposition is in your ability to creatively collaborate and putting the customer in the middle. I've heard the word personalization used a lot. What are your thoughts about that?
Again, I think it's a good use of data. And I think it's a noble mission that every company should have a personalization strategy for consumers. I think it goes back to client centricity, it's consumer centricity for our clients. It's what do consumers want? What is the right type of personalization that recognizes that if I'm a multi channel buyer and shopper for a company, if I'm very loyal, those things should be clear in the way you serve me, in the way your content and your engagements and experiences ladder back up to that knowledge of me if I've given you those permissions. I also think at the same time, if we're just chasing like a mass personalization, we miss the importance of community and of the fact that people build community through brand. And so I think there are going to be limits to that as well. And we've got to think about how people feel that sense of connection. People have become more and more isolated. We know people are lonelier than ever before. And what's the brand's role in breaking down and being an antidote to those issues? Starbucks is a great example of that. So if Starbucks has to get personalization for me, right? But it also has to get the fact that I recognize that I'm part of a community and I want to feel that community connection both through the baristas, through my neighbors that are there, or through I'm in international city and I still want that kind of taste of home.
Are you familiar with the work of Marty Neumeier, The Brand Gap? He said a brand is not what you say it is, it's what they say it is. It's the vague, irrational gut feeling that people have in working with you, your company, and your products and services. Just brought that to mind. But a couple more questions. So when President Obama was elected, he said to himself on election night, what is one goal that I could achieve the first year of my administration that if achieved would be transformational, would make a difference? Do you have such a goal in mind, or is it too early days to even think about that?
For sure. There's nothing more intoxicating in an agency than winning. So that to me is business, and that's also creative awards and recognition. And I think If we get that drumbeat of winning again, new clients, clients that we have today in new areas of our business, serving them, and creative awards, creative energy, I think all of that is the feed and fuel for an agency. And then people feel it in their careers. And then it gives them a reason to be in the office.
Well, I wrote a book called Your First 100 Days, and I talked about early wins. So I guess it would be great if you could score some early wins in your first 365 days, or if not, your first 100 days.
That would be nice.
All right. Thank you very much for your time and attention. It's been wonderful to speak with you. And if we can do anything to help you, that would be great. Let's keep up the conversation and be friends.
That sounds great. Thank you so much. And your expertise, and clearly your own writing and the books that you reference are also still so relevant to the industry.
All right. Thanks.